Welcome to the Callback Countdown podcast. I'm Joseph Maxwell. I am currently producing a musical that I wrote, which is crazy, and I wanted to share the story of how it came to be. So I'll be going back through my whole life and pinpointing the people, places, and moments that led directly or indirectly to this. Today I'm joined by Eddy Marflak. I don't actually remember when I met Eddy, but I definitely remember the first time I played at Blank Slate Illyria, and then kind of by osmosis became friends with Eddy. It was my favorite venue during a very formative time for me in terms of music and community. And nowadays, we don't see each other all that often, but he did DJ my wedding, which is great. And every time our paths cross, it's an absolute delight. Part of why I'm doing this is just to force myself to talk to my friends. So, welcome, Eddy.
Thank you.
So to get started, taking it even, far back as you want to go, how did you first get into music?
Hmm. Do you mean getting into music as in being actively involved, or like it being like something that I enjoyed a little more than casually?
Let's go with option B, some like earliest inkling of it becoming part of your life.
Yeah, I had pretty young parents, like early 20s, and it was in the 90s, so I feel like a lot of different musical genres were getting exposure at that time. There was like a cultural shift, with grunge and, house music and like New Jack Swing kind of coming into the mainstream, and gangster rap. But then there's also like this really huge like singer-songwriter boom. And I think just because my parents were young and there's so much variety of like radio stations, they were into a little bit of all of it.
Hmm.
So I just accidentally got, I don't know, it's like an education without any tutelage, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think my parents were just like, I don't know, I heard this on the radio, let's buy the record. And because I was like three, I didn't know that there was any difference between like, what I was supposed to like or what I wasn't supposed to like, or, genre
Mm-hmm.
distinction. So I think just at a very, very young age, I was fascinated by the way that sound resonates and, music resonates. And I think I mean that like actually physically, but I think I also mean that emotionally. And of course, this hindsight's 2020. When you're three, you're not thinking about that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, the emotional resident resonance of anything. Yeah.
yeah, but I just remember, my parents playing music very, very loud because they're young, and me like sitting as close to the speakers as possible. And yeah, so I think my entire life is the answer to your question.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So from listening to music to sort of starting to play music or find the community around music, how did that start to happen?
Yeah, so my dad never played in any bands or anything, but always had like an acoustic guitar or a keyboard around. So I was always
Hmm.
tinkering, but never that seriously. And then I think seventh grade, I got into punk, and it felt like I could do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I asked for a bass guitar, and I remember my dad being upset because he's like, "No, you want to be like a lead guitar player, right? Like that's what's cool." And I was like, "No, I want to be in a band."
Hmm.
Everyone thinks they're Hendrix, but like nobody's playing bass. So I specifically wanted to play bass and immediately tried to write music and join a band. And but I think it wasn't really community until I moved from Avon Lake to Berea a little bit like right after high school started.
Hmm.
And there's a very large DIY scene there. And that's when it felt like a community as opposed to just like something you do with your three friends on the weekends. Yeah, it just felt way different than practicing in a garage. There were political zines, and somebody was talking to me about feminism and veganism. And Berea was a really cool place because it's just what you did. So, like, the jocks also went to the community center to go watch punk bands just because they were
Hmm.
like, "It's Friday, we heard there's a thing, let's go to it." So, yeah, I think that's when it became, oh, I'm like a part of something. It's not just playing music with your friends.
Yeah, that's super cool. I do have to shout out, my dad was a bassist in a band. So that's how I got into music. And he like very specifically wanted me to play bass also. So,
Mhm.
to pass that down. But the year that I got my bass, my two other friends also got bass guitars, so we could not start a band. It was not feasible. Like,
Like a Spinal Tap moment where you're just all playing different bass instruments.
yeah, I think we would have loved we might have even tried at some point. Like me and my one friend definitely did some stuff, but yeah, it's bass
Mhm.
is a great instrument to be in a band, but you kind of need a little bit more than just bass, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that sounds awesome. Berea sounds cool. I'm gonna move there maybe. That sounds amazing. So I think for me, I'm still like searching for that community and feel sometimes like I found it and then sometimes like drifting out of it and into it, you know. But I feel
Mhm.
like there's something about being in high school or being around some of the same people so often where you are kind of not forced to see each other, but you have that built-in touch point of like we're gonna be at school, we're gonna hang out, and like that can be a really powerful thing.
And
Um,
you're trying to figure out who you are, but so is everyone else. So you can
mhm.
almost like, I don't know, when you're presented with someone who isn't like you are, then it forces you to kind of like stand on your grounds a little bit and like really to go, no, this is who I am. But also when you find like-minded people, you go, oh, like we're figuring this out together, you know?
Yeah, yeah, super cool. So what happened after high school?
Right, I'll just give the short version.
Yeah.
Uh, some older guys said they needed a guitar player, so I lied and said I knew how to play guitar, even though I was like strictly a bass player. I joined their band and went on tour, and then that band became two other bands and toured in my early 20s, and then moved to Illyria with my partner at the time, and she was also from Berea, so we kind of like took for granted like that kind of community. And when we moved to
Yeah.
Illyria, that community had disappeared. So we went looking for it, and that's how Blank Slate ended up happening. That's the very condensed version.
Yeah.
Is we found some people who were really trying hard to maintain what was left of the Illyria like independent music scene, and they were trying to find people to help them with their vision.
Hmm.
And we got together and figured it out eventually. And then movers and shakers move and shake, and um, I think that's when you came into the picture.
Somewhere in the what year did Blank Slate actually start?
So there was like a year and a half of like pre-planning and doing house shows and fundraisers and stuff.
Hmm.
Our first official show, I think, was April 2016.
Okay.
I want to say like April 8th or April 10th, 2016. I think when was your? I can't remember if I met you through Luke Evans or if you just reached out cold call.
Well, so I actually already talked to Maggie because I remember very distinctly I did just like cold email Blank Slate and Maggie messaged me on Facebook and was like, "Hey, be on this show." So that was the first show I played. I'm almost positive you were not there, but like Maggie was there, Ben Walgamuth was there. That's where I met the two of them at that show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I don't have like Luke and I did. I know we did a 5 minute fest set. I think we probably also just played together with like at some point doing something.
Yeah, because before you
But
guys' duo set at 5 Minute Fest, you had both definitely played the venue multiple times by that point.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So I do not remember actually meeting you or like I think you were there at some point and I was like, oh hey, that's that guy that I saw the Facebook like like I saw I'd seen pictures of you and then met you for the first time. I don't remember though.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically either.
But yeah, Blank Slate, really a magical place, and I kind of like similar. I took Blank Slate for granted for sure. I was like, oh, this is like what venues are. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like it just felt so normal because it was really one of the first places that I played when I was just trying to get a show anywhere, and
Hmm.
it was now looking back, I'm like, oh wait, that was really special and really cool. Um, so when you were getting started, like with all the pre-planning and everything, what were you trying to like what was your main goal or what did you want Blank Slate to be? Like what was the vision?
Yeah, so like I said, I jumped in when it had already people were already trying to do some version of it. They just didn't know like who was going to help and what it was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to give initial credit to Sean Stirk. I don't think he's doing much these days. I know he's like a father. I think he helps his family run his restaurant, but he was the guy who really reached out to people trying to figure out how to make this happen. And then somebody named Kevin Gilfeather, who I haven't talked to them in years either, so I don't really know what they're up to either. But
Mm-hmm.
we were all, it just was like a focus group for what what was sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
what was missing from the venues that did exist, not in Illyria, but other places. And also, like, we tried to bridge the gap between what a legitimate music venue was and what a DIY space was. And we're like, how can we just cherry pick the best parts and try our hardest to avoid the worst parts?
Yeah.
Um, and that was essentially it. We just knew that it had to be. I mean, we were inspired a lot by the Roboto project in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
Um,
Can you tell me a bit? I've not heard of that.
yeah,
I
so
probably should have, but
hey, there's no, I didn't hear about it until I heard about it, you know?
yeah.
Um, it was around for like, it's still around. They've moved locations about 15, 20 years ago, maybe. So it's been around for like, I think, don't quote me on this, but I know you're recording me, so you are quoting me on this. But like 30 some years. They've been around a very long time. From my understanding, started very similarly, just people being like, hey, we need a space that isn't a basement.
Hmm.
And what can we do with that? And can it be a community space as well as a venue? Um, and I don't know if it always was, but it's a sober space. I think even during COVID, they were taking like you know mask regulations like very seriously, like well past what other people were doing because they're so
Hmm.
community centered. They just didn't want to take any chances, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really just like a multicultural space, but run by punks and do-gooders and activists and
Yeah.
um, yeah. So that was the main inspiration. Even just like the on paper version. It's not like we knew how it operated or anything.
Hmm.
Um, we just heard about it, and I played there a couple times and liked the concept.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think constantly. So I have always been inspired by Blank Slate and by you and your ability to run and book shows and put on shows, especially maintaining that DIY perspective and that ethos in everything. And I think definitely a struggle with, DIY. I used to think, you got to be there's a spectrum and it's either DIY or professional. I don't think that's exactly right. I think there's like DIY and corporate, and then there's like professional and amateur, and you can kind of move them around a little bit. Like that's sort of my new
Okay.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Because I think you can be professional and DIY at the same time for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but it's, I try to carry that idea because I think there's so much power in the DIY, not as opposed to good quality or as opposed to professional, but as opposed to like corporate or homogenous or mainstream. Um, so what do you when you think of DIY, what do you think are the important tenets, or what are the best parts of DIY at its best?
Hmm. It's community centered and community ran. It's it's answering barriers. Um, it's it's answering barriers, but it's respecting boundaries.
Hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but the way I'm thinking about this, especially now from the lens of like I've been doing intervention work for domestic violence agency now for the last 5 years, and it sounds like I'm going off topic, but I think I would the work I did with Blank Slate led me to this,
Hmm.
and I think now it's really informing my opinion about just like how humanity works and how community works. And
Hmm.
I think like when I say like removing barriers or answering barriers, it's that DIY only exists because people said no to something, or people said, well, if you don't like it, do it yourself.
Hmm.
Right. I mean,
Right.
even when you think about like DIY, like car culture in the 60s, right? And I'm just like, okay, I need to learn how to maintain my vehicle myself and let's skill share. And,
Hmm.
I think anything can be DIY. It doesn't have to be punk. It doesn't have to be music, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah. And then with the boundaries thing, I mean, that's the whole safer space concept that we really, really tried to maintain.
Yeah.
It's the idea that like we can't protect you from all dangers and all criticism and all, uncomfortability, but we can try our best.
Hmm.
So I think it's when you're saying like professional versus DIY, I think a lot of people get the like caring about the community part right.
Hmm.
Um, but you also have to do a good job.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not just like what is the thing, it's like how well can it be maintained.
Yeah, you mentioned like sustainability and actually doing something that can persist not just on goodwill, but on actual work and actual you know, like how does
Mhm.
it get funded? How do people actually benefit from it? And because that's so huge. And it's I mean, our country, like the whole system is not really set up for that to exist. So it's like a constant battle of how do you create something that is still true to itself and still for the community by the community, but also is maintainable and does like can persist. It's a constant struggle, I think. And I have no answers. I don't know how.
No, me neither. And there's success monetarily, which we were always really bad at. Um, and like that was kind of by design, but
Right.
we maybe shouldn't have designed it uh, that way. Hindsight. But like the other part of success is like, does it serve the needs of the community, right? So I think there's like an accountability factor involved with it. Are you holding yourself up to the standards that the community needs and the standards that you set up for yourself to begin with? And if not,
Mhm.
are you able to analyze and restructure, right? And I think that can be moral, that can be monetary, that can be artistically, that can be so many things. But I think a lot of times we want to stick to our original intentions instead of shifting to the actual needs or what's actually sustainable. And I think that
Yeah.
goes beyond just running a venue. I think that's everything in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so hard to like in my regular job or in my life, I'm like, I have an idea of what should be done and why it needs to be done. And then you meet actual people or you're in an actual space, actual community, like, oh, they want something a little bit different. Or I need like you have to be completely responsive to that, which can be challenging, especially when you got to do stuff on paper. You got to pre-plan. You got to figure stuff out. And then it's like, oh, got to be flexible. It's it's hard. And kind of speaking, this is a bit of a segue into that, but 5 Minute Fest, a logistical miracle that you're able to pull that off. One of my favorite shows and experiences ever, but especially at Blank Slate. Another one, Heart Reacts. I love that show, that fest. Those are two of like the ones that I really remember. And I definitely want to hear you talk a bit more about 5 Minute Fest and pulling that together. But any other shows that come to mind as like super memorable from the blank slate days.
There were so many for different reasons that I don't know if I can pinpoint either unexpected lineup or unexpected turnout or um, it opening a pathway to another community partnership. There was this one called Rap and Gifts, like Rap and Gifts.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was a children's toy drive that a friend of ours, Fabian, put on every Christmas, and he's still doing it on his own accord. Um, and it was so cool because we had very little to do with it,
Hmm.
but and that's why it was named Blank Slate because we're like at the end of the day, it's just some walls and some electricity.
Hmm.
So like the people in the space is what defines what it is, right? That was always our goal. But
Hmm.
like until we actually like had the trust and the buy-in of certain community members, everyone was just like, oh, that's just for like suburban punks or whatever, you know?
Hmm.
So that one really sticks out to me because it was for the community by the community, and it was so creative and so wholesome. Yeah, I loved helping with the logistics of that.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
awesome.
I mean, there are just so many. I mean, one of the 5 Minute Fests, a band from Malta played.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
wild.
and I
Could
felt
you,
insane 'cause my friends' bands were like, "Hey, we're on tour. Can we come play?" And I was like, "I can't move 5 Minute Fest. Are you guys okay with playing for 5 minutes?" And they said,
yeah,
"Yeah, we'll backline it."
it's so wild. So for the folks at home, can you give a quick rundown of what 5 Minute Fest is? I gotta pull up like an old like run of all the bill or something. But can you just tell us what is 5 Minute Fest?
Yeah, so 5 Minute Fest was inspired by two different fests. One that I had been a part of and one that I hadn't. So in Pittsburgh again, there used to be a fest called ADD Fest, and it was 10 bands for 10 minutes.
Mm.
Um, and then the Cleveland Lottery League is the other
Mm.
one. And the Lottery League is, you draw a number, that's your band. You have a few weeks to come up with a set, and there you go. And we're thinking about, first we were hoping that a bunch of people would start brand new bands. And so we did it thinking, okay, it's really hard to figure out all those logistics and to stick to a theme and do all this, but anybody could write 5 minutes of music, even if they don't
Mm.
like each other.
Yeah.
So that was our hope that it would be a springboard for people to start a whole bunch of new bands. What ended up happening is it became a springboard for people in bands to get themselves out of their comfort zone.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So, the pop singer was like, I've always wanted to play in a metal band. Or, I've actually been working with samplers for years, but nobody knows that because I'm the guy who drums in the reggae band or whatever. I'm just making these things up, but like it
Mm-hmm.
was always something like that.
Yeah.
And so the concept was 25 bands play 5 minute sets, and it started at 5 o'clock, and we tried to make it on the fifth every year, and and somehow it was actually almost always the easiest show to run. So you remember there was a bullhorn and a
Mm-hmm.
stopwatch.
Yeah. You
Um,
stuck to that schedule.
and I think building in the rules into the fun is why
Mm-hmm.
it worked.
Yes, 100%.
Because
Yeah.
if some people started to play with it, they'd be like, "We have to beat the buzzer," or they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "We're just going to crescendo until we hear the buzzer," or like people started to use it as a part of the show.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how we pulled it off every year, but we did, even with a dinner break.
Yeah. Yeah. It was incredible. And I loved that. I loved having like being on such a strict schedule. And it's like it's just unilateral. Like you don't feel bad cutting anybody off because it's just completely fair. So everybody gets exactly that amount of time. And
Yeah.
it's like I think without that bullhorn, it would not have like it would have been so much harder. But
No, because somebody would be too nice to
right.
cut something off, or
Right.
yeah,
But it was like I think that was just the expectation was so clearly set up top that it was like, okay, this is going to be so much fun for everybody. That a very I played with Luke Evans, who I'm going to talk to at some point
Mhm.
on this. I think we'd played together maybe a couple times, but having that 5 minute fest was like such a good like impetus for us to get together and write a song. I think that was maybe the first song we ever wrote together. I mean, we actually don't, maybe we've never written another song together. That might have been the one time we wrote a song together. Because of 5 minute fest, we were just like, hey, we only need to do 5 minutes. Like we don't need to put together a whole set and we can play a show to an audience and
Yeah,
like and see a bunch of other great stuff happening, which was so cool. Such a fun thing. Have you ever thought about trying to bring that back in some form, some way?
yes. Uh, Especially the last 2 years, I've been thinking about it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I would need to find a venue
Yeah.
that's as stupid but as strict as I am.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's a wild balance. Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Go ahead.
it's like so fun, but it's not sloppy. Like somehow it maintains that air of just it's carefree but not sloppy. I don't understand how you do it, but
Yeah,
it's so great.
and I hope that it wasn't unique to the space. That's kind of like
Mm,
my concern is that
hmm.
like, but yes, absolutely. I've been thinking about it a lot lately.
Yeah.
Um, it would have to be a team.
Yeah.
Everyone would have
Oh,
to be completely on the same page.
right.
Um, Never say never. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you do, let me know when there's a date. I will happily jump on a 5 minute set. I can do
Yeah.
something.
All right.
Awesome. Um, So yeah, we I mean, I said Blank Slate was my favorite venue, and I do think it was a special, unique that like nothing's ever gonna be like that. But there are definitely some other good venues around. You mentioned Vibrato Project. Are there any other venues that you've played recently or cool ones that you think are still up and running? any other spots that are good for folks to check out?
There are there are no consistent show spaces that are trying to do what we were doing.
Right.
And I don't think they should, right? They
Hmm.
should find their own thing. Anyone who's doing DIY spaces, like it worked because it was authentic to us, not because it
Yeah.
was like perfect or anything. We made
Yeah.
tons of mistakes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as legitimate venues, I think there's some that are really, really equitable in how they run things.
Hmm.
Specifically Happy Dog and the Little
Yeah.
Rose.
Yeah.
Those two are incredible. Very different vibes as far as capacity and the setting, but they both care a lot about the music and the musician.
Hmm.
Um, Brothers Lounge has been having a lot of variety in their programming lately,
Mm.
which I always thought it was, and this is no diss to Brothers Lounge at all. I thought it was like kind of for like an older like blues and jazz crowd when I was like a teenager.
Hmm.
So I kind of just never went in, and it's a beautiful space, and they do take a portion, but it's way more fair than a lot of places.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I've been frequenting as far as like my bands go.
Cool.
Um, I'm about to play, is it next Friday? Next Saturday, the 9th. I am playing at a place I've never been at called the Cherry Pit. Somewhere
Mm.
on the east side. I don't actually know the exact address. It's like a Ask a Punk kind of situation.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but so I'm not aware of too many DIYs, like specific spaces in Cleveland-ish right now.
Hmm.
Um, you know, in Lorraine, Ship to Shore,
Okay.
they they're a coffee shop slash record store slash bookstore that's opening up very, very soon. Um, but they've been doing shows in a church sometimes, and also in a space that they call the Lorraine Cinematheque, but I think it's just somebody's house. Um,
Nice. That
but
rocks.
they've been doing really progressive programming, and they're really, really community centered in everything that they do, and I'm really excited to see how they grow.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that would be the closest thing that I am aware of.
Cool.
And then the Cleveland Art Workers, they're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff. They don't have a specific space,
Yeah.
but I think their mission is incredible, and I really hope that they can stick to kind of alternative programming and kind of raise awareness for, you know, organizing the music scene.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's been um tough for me. I mean, I already talked to Maggie, and we talked about how there's a lot of great momentum. Everything felt really good in March of 2020, and then, some stuff happened, which was really hard for me personally, uh, and for the community in general. And I think it feels like in some ways there's been recovery, but in some ways it's never really gotten better. So I know it's a tough time for many, but do you want to talk about what that experience was like for you when COVID hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I experienced ego death like three different times.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to go too much into personal specifics.
sure. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'll try and touch on some notes. I mean, right, our entire business model was let's get people into a room.
Yeah.
That became illegal. Like
Right.
it's wild. Stephen Rice, who was a big part of Blank Slate, especially towards the end, he was in, where was he? It might have even been Hong Kong. He was
Hmm.
over in, I forget, because he went to a few places, but
Yeah.
it was already over in that area. And he came back and he's like, guys, I'm telling you, we have to be ready. And
Yeah.
we were like, okay, but like I don't know, we're like in the center of the country, and
Right.
it maybe we'll handle it better. And I'm so glad that we thought he was a little too concerned, and then like
Hmm.
2 weeks later, he was like, I told you guys, like,
Right. Yeah.
and we were like, yeah, and we thought it was temporary, right? You can go back and look at our Facebook and like
Hmm.
see how we tried to handle it. We're like, we're canceling shows for 2 weeks because we care about your health, and then we were like, we're canceling shows for 2 months because we care about your health, and
Yeah.
then we were like, we're leaving the venue.
Yeah.
Um, And a multitude of things happened all at the same time, right? Our building got sold in a cash deal to a guy who owns most of Illyria now,
Oh man.
um, right from under our nose, right before the pandemic hit.
Oh
And
wow. I
then
didn't know
the
that.
pandemic hit. Yeah, and they wouldn't discuss a lease with us. And we were nickel and diming it, but we had raised a few $1,000s to convert the space into a coffee shop,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in the middle of it. I mean, we were tiling walls. We bought cabinets. We were
Man.
reconstructing an espresso machine. We were doing, nothing that took a permit, but we were doing all the pre-planning before we had to get to that point, right? As much as
Yeah.
we could, as cheaply as we could. And so we were a couple grand into this and didn't have a lease and didn't have any kind of certainty for a
Mm-hmm.
future in that space or beyond, right? Um, and we tried to pivot to it being like that online publication. We turned our website into a living zine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if I'm being honest, it was like trauma momentum.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost a way of like avoiding the reality of what was going on. Like we'll
Wow.
just we'll keep working,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's really easy to say people need us more than ever now. And I think we did a lot of good. I do. But I think it also caused a lot of like odd resentment between people involved, and some of us were losing family members and jobs and
Yeah.
housing situations changing and relationships ending, and um, while trying to keep this community dream afloat in this digital only space.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. So, I mean, maybe it didn't end in the most like grandiose or like, there wasn't a season finale.
Yeah.
Um, but it felt right when it did end.
Mm.
Um, and, we pivoted to a bunch of community work, um, which honestly, I wish we would have done way more of from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I think we thought of it as like, oh, this is like the pocket dimension, like away from all the like shitty things in the world, and that's what blank slate is. Like you come
Yeah.
here and suddenly everything's cool again.
Yeah.
Uh, and I wish we would have let that seep out into the rest of our community a bit
Mm-hmm.
more. And we
Mm-hmm.
did, like we started the Garford Arts Fest, which some people are still doing. Nobody from like OG blank slate days are like highly involved, but so that's still a thing's going on. But yeah, I don't know. That trajectory kind of changed the way I think about community work and led to where I'm at now. I mean, we tried to stop a building from being torn down. We helped start a community development corporation in that town. We protested the sale of the Confederate flag at the fair with the Illyria YWCA. Like it opened up so many doors to like I don't want to say like actual change because
Mm-hmm.
I think Blank Slate uh changed kind of the way that our local DIY is a little bit in ways that we weren't even trying to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was a weird time. It was a time of identity crisis and just trying our best to do some version of what we were already doing and realizing that we actually needed to work on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. I know it's a heavy, heavy stuff. I want to touch on a little bit the thinking about because you're talking about like making change, and one thing that I think about a lot is sort of the idea of impact or significance, importance, and the idea of meaning. And because it can feel like no change is being made or like you're not doing much, but it can be meaningful to someone, and that can be huge. That can be so important, even if it's not like a law gets changed. You
Hmm.
can have very meaningful, impactful um, events or interactions or whatever those are that stick with people, and I think it's easy to say that it's not it's easy to say it's insignificant, but I think that those things are also meaningful. So I mean everything that you did, everything that Blank Slate did, and all that stuff is still important.
I agree, and I feel like at the time I didn't.
Hmm.
I almost took the impact for granted because it wasn't as successful as like I hoped or like we didn't do everything perfectly, right? It's really easy
Right.
when you're in the moment to just get down on yourself, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. When I think about like, I'm like not really great at gardening or whatever, but I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some really old gardening books and like from like the 40s, and one of the things talks so much about like you don't take care of plants, you take care of soil,
Mm.
and then the soil takes care of the plants, right? So it's only
Yeah.
your job to make sure that the soil's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's not exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't realize the results of your efforts while you're tilling the soil, while you're giving it the nutrients, while you're doing whatever you got to do, right? While you're mending it. But eventually, change happens.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're not even there for it.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's how I feel about it,
Wow.
as obtuse as that might sound.
That's no, that's beautiful. I am gonna steal that 100%. I'm probably gonna say it to someone tomorrow. Like I'm gonna I'm gonna say that all the time. That's amazing. All right. Well, to end on a bit of a just lighter topic, what are you doing? Like, what are you playing musically these days? You're in a band. Anything big coming up? You mentioned one show on the 9th, but how's your music life been these days?
It's been great. I mean, yeah, that's stayed pretty consistent. I mean, it's shifted like who I'm playing with or what kind of music or whatever, but yeah. So the main two projects that I'm in is Close Down, which is around right before the pandemic,
Hmm.
and that's like kind of, I don't know, like post-hardcore. There's some dancey parts, there's some yelly parts, there's some catchy parts, there's some ugly
Hmm.
parts. That's the main project, and then I play in this really really heavy band called Orphaned. Um, that's my buddy Ted's project. He writes most of the music, but we get to write our own parts, and it's collaborative in that nature for sure. And that one's really fun because it's just as fast and as loud as I can possibly play. So it's a challenge, and it's such a different like what's the word for it? The song structures are really different. The sense of melody is really different than anything else I've ever played.
Hmm.
So that's been a fun challenge. Those are the main two. I still play with Jason Kaminsky occasionally. Um, I think he's trying to balance a lot with continued education and his career as teaching, and I'm sure he's probably secretly writing two records at the same time that we'll find
Yeah.
out
Gonna
about.
release under a pseudonym of some kind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But those are the main two. Um, yeah,
Awesome. Cool.
that's
Well, I
mostly it. I am personally not music related, two exciting things, I guess, is right. So I work in batterers intervention, so it's a pretty heavy gig where I work with people who've caused harm in their relationships. But I've been really expanding that role and to be preventionist as well as intervention.
mm,
So I've like gotten some certifications to go into schools and talk to like young men specifically about like what healthy relationships, what healthy masculinity looks like, trying to
wow.
kind of combat the manosphere kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
Um,
huge.
and that's been really, really rewarding recently. And then also next year, my partner Emily and I are gonna get married, so
Yay.
it's exciting.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
rocks. Yeah, good things. Good things. So I'm not sure when this is. This might not be released by the 9th. Do you have any other shows or anything else you want to plug? Any, you know, music out or anything? Where can people find you?
Yeah. I mean, you can find us either my music projects on the social medias. I mean, I don't know. They're all
Fair.
evil. I'm trying
Yeah,
to figure out how to
right.
like actually stay in touch with people without being sucked into a screen at all times. But
Yeah.
for now, yeah, close down is pretty easy to find. It's one word. And orphaned, yeah. I mean, Bandcamp, the streaming sites, the social medias, all of those. I think Instagram's the most one we're the most active on, but that's not really by choice. It's more just that's what people are using.
Yeah.
Other shows. Orphan doesn't really have much because Ted's about to have a kid. But we'll have something probably in October. We just put out a record last month. So if you like really heavy, crazy stuff, you should go check it out. Close Down has that show on the 9th, another show on the 22nd at Brothers Lounge, And then I think the third show hasn't been announced yet, but it's in November. So just, I don't know, follow our socials for more details or whatever.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Eddie. Really, always a pleasure to talk to you, and hope to see you soon at some in some capacity in
Yeah,
real life.
when's the show? When's
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Yeah,
so callback is August 29th through the 31st at Imposters Theater in Cleveland. Uh, so you can go to callbackmusical.com, find all the info, get the tickets. Yeah, would love to see you there. Would love to see you anywhere. It would
yeah.
be a joy.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool.
Bye.
Bye, friend.
Okay. Now we're cut.